Welcome students, I'm Nehal Asgaonkar, Assistant Professor from Government College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Cape Goa. Today we are going to take a general elective paper of first year which is taken in semester 2. Course code is BOG 102 and course title is Coastal Mangrove Ecology. Title of today's unit is Principle of Coastal Ecology, which is from Unit 1. Module name is Mangrove Biodiversity, which will include methods of assessing biodiversity, and module number is 03. The outline of this module, this module will help us to introduce what is biodiversity, what is mangrove biodiversity. It will help us to know the need of assessing biodiversity, methods of assessing biodiversity, which will include the diversity index, species richness index, and evenness index. The learning outcomes of this module will help us to define what is biodiversity, explain the need of assessment of biodiversity, able to learn different methods of assessing biodiversity, and describe the method of assessing biodiversity. So let's start. Biodiversity. Biodiversity is a word which is combined using two words. One is bio and one is diversity, where bio refers to life and diversity means variation. It refers to all the variety of life that can be found on Earth, which includes plant, animals, fungi, and different kinds of microorganisms, as well as the community in that they are formed and the habitat in which they live, which includes the ecosystem. Biodiversity is often understood at three different levels. First is the species diversity, then there is genetic diversity, and then there is ecosystem diversity. In species diversity, we refer to the variety of different species. These different species can be any kind of species. In genetic diversity, it responds to the variety of genes which are contained in plant, animal, fungi, and microorganisms. Ecosystem biodiversity refers to all the different habitats that the plants or animal exist, like the tropical or temperate region, or the forests, hot and cold deserts, wetlands, rivers, mountains, coral reefs, etc. Now let's focus on mangrove biodiversity. What are mangroves? Mangroves are salt-tolerant flowering plants growing in tropical and subtropical regions. Mangroves are plants which are either shrub, tree, or fern growing above sea level of marine coastal environment exceeding a height of 0.5 meter. Mangrove ecosystem supports diverse flora and fauna because of their interaction with aquatic and terrestrial ecosystem. Why there is a need for assessment of biodiversity? Biodiversity boosts the ecosystem productivity, where each species, no matter how small they are, have an important role to play. Biodiversity provides functioning ecosystem that supply oxygen, clean air, and water, pollination of plants, pest control, wastewater treatment, and many ecosystem services. Criteria based on which diversity is measured. There are 4 criteria. First one is the ability to discriminate between the sites. Then there is sample size. Then there is component of diversity in which it is measured. And fourth are the various indices. 3 common methods of measuring biodiversity, that is the diversity index, the species richness index, and the evenness index. Let's go in detail one by one. First is the diversity index, which is a quantitative measure that reflects how many different types, such as species, there are in a data set, or a community, or an ecosystem, and that can simultaneously take into account the phylogenetic relation among the individuals which are distributed among those types, such as richness, divergence, and evenness. The diversity index is calculated using Shannon-Weiner diversity index, and this symbol is used to for this index. Shannon-Winner index. It is the most commonly used index. Value ranges from 0 to 5, usually ranging from 1.5 to 3.5. This is the formula which is used to calculate, in which Ni is the number of individual or the amount, example biomass of each species, and N is the total number of individual or the amount for the site, and this Ln is the natural log of the number. Advantages and disadvantages. Relatively easy to calculate and fairly sensitive to actual site differences. Next, let's go to species richness, which is observed species. This is a count of the number of the unique species that occur in a sample or in a community. Shannon. The Shannon-Winner index considers both the number of unique species and their relatively abundance within a sample. Species richness is usually calculated by using this Simpson's index, and this is the formula by which this is the symbol by which it is stated. Lambda is the measure of dominance. Therefore, 1 minus lambda measures species diversity. Gives the probability that any two individuals drawn at random from an infinitely large community belongs to different species. This is the formula which is used, where Ni is the number of individual or amount of each species, that is, the number of individual of the ith species, and N is the total number of individual for the site. Advantages and disadvantages. This is less sensitive to species richness and heavily weighted towards the most abundant species. Generally, less sensitive than Shannon-Winner index. And last, we'll see species evenness. This refers to how close in number each species in the environmental is. This diversity index is a measure of biodiversity, which quantifies how equal the community is numerically. This is a symbol which is used, where Nc is a common species between sites. N1 is the species of site 1 and N2 is the species of site 2. Disadvantages. When communities are very difficult, comparing diversity indices may not be meaningful. Diversity indices often do not change for sites within similar species but different proportion. Besides this, there are additional methods which are used to measure biodiversity. For example, canopy fogging, quadrant sampling, translink sampling, and netting. The method used depends on the type of organisms ecologists are counting and on the habitat in which they live. What is the importance of the assessment of this biodiversity? Economic importance. Biodiversity provides humans with raw material for consumption and production. Ecological. Biodiversity supplies oxygen, clean air and water, pollination for plants, pest control, wastewater treatment, and many ecosystem services. Then there is recreation. Many recreational sites rely on this unique biodiversity, such as bird watching, hiking, camping, and fishing. Cultural. People have strong connection and obligation to biodiversity arising from spiritual beliefs about plants and animals. So let's summarize this module. Biodiversity refers to the variety of life. Biodiversity is formed by combining two words, that is bio and variation. It is seen in the variation of species in an ecosystem or on the entire earth. Biodiversity have a fundamental value to humans. Therefore, assessing biodiversity is very important. These are some book references which I have used and some web references. Thank you.